this morning we're talking about cybersecurity for small businesses. Try to break this down into little easier to understand chunks, and we're going to play a game while we're going through this so that I don't put you folks to sleep. So first and foremost, we've got what we would call best practices. So you've got teleworking and information access best practices. So these are things that you should be doing as it pertains to your information. So for example, is access to your systems and data encrypted and password protected? When you're doing something on a website, for example, you need to make sure that there's a lock right next to the address in the URL to show that it's encrypted. You need to make sure that the data is encrypted, and by how much. If you have a provider, you can ask them that question, and they'll probably be pretty impressed that you asked that question. But passwords, oh my goodness, passwords are important. How strong is the password? Are you using the password anywhere else? So just about everybody reuses passwords, and we all know that that's bad. We all hate keeping up with passwords, but one of the many reasons why you need to have different passwords for everything is systems get compromised. Home Depot, Target, Yahoo, these are things you have no control over. And if you have a Yahoo account with the same password as your Bank of America account and Yahoo gets compromised, you might have a problem with your bank. So you really, really, really got to keep your password separated, as annoying as that is. And I like to tell folks, if you think you have a lot of passwords, you just see how many I have. It's absolutely crazy. When you're done using your computer, you should lock it up. If you're using a Windows machine, it's super easy. You hold down the Windows button, which is to the left of your space bar, and then hit L, and it locks your computer. And you need to make sure your information is secured on a need-to-know basis. So if you have an accounting employee and an HR employee, and you're the business owner, for example, you should be able to see everything for both roles, but the HR person shouldn't be able to see the accounting information, and the accounting person shouldn't be able to see the HR information. So you want to make sure that you're separating out your data on a need to know, need to access type of basis, because most places the employees can get into everything, which causes all kinds of chaos. So in the interest of waking you folks up, because I am really deep into this coffee here and I am wide awake, we're going to play a game. This game is called Name That Nerd. So I'm going to show you a nerd. Be ready to type in the chat. There is a prize at the end of this for whoever scores the highest, but the first person to correctly name this nerd in the chat is going to get a point here, and Susan's going to help us keep score. All right. Who is this? Put it in the chat. One of my favorite nerds for sure.
We've got a winner. I mean, we've got a lot of winners, but we've got a first response winner.
All right. Who was the first responder on that one?
That was David Mungai. Did I pronounce that right, David?
Well, congrats, David. And I've always considered this guy not just a nerd, but also a little bit of a dork. But he's a trained MMA fighter now, so who knows what to expect from this guy? Blows my mind. All right, so moving right along here, we've got computer safety, nerd style. So you got to ask yourself, are your computers protected? Do you have, so that's like antivirus. We've all heard antivirus, Norton, McAfee. There's way better stuff out there than that, but that's the idea. A lot of times there's infections on the machines. Do you have real endpoint protection, and is it managed? So that's a fancy way of saying a lot of times when you have an infiltration on a network, it will turn off, say, your Norton or your McAfee. And once it's a part of your operating system, it'll turn it back on, and now it's undetectable. So if you have a managed security option, like something like what we have, we see those kind of attempts taking place, and then we stop them in their tracks. So that's a much, much better way of staying safe these days with the type of attacks you got. But you also have to worry about the network. Do you have network protection, firewalls, that kind of thing? And what can you do if you don't? So we have solutions. Clay mentioned this from the bio. We can give you enterprise grade security. The way we're able to do that is we can actually make the firewall happen at the computer level. So we can secure a computer. So if you have 2 employees and both of them work out of their homes, you can secure down to the computer and you're good to go. The fun little fact, we were at a luncheon with the FBI a couple of years ago, and the FBI asked if anybody was doing the security that way. And the only hand that went up in the room was mine. And I got singled out. They said, you're supposed to be doing it the way they're doing it. So if you secure it at the end level, you're much, much better off. But wake up, everybody, because we got a nerd coming in hot. We got a picture of this guy in the office, but to be fair, it is a different picture. Ready for the chat. We're going to name a nerd. And this is an old picture of him. Put it in the chat. I love this picture. Love this picture. Best picture of this guy ever.
Okay, everybody's jumping in, but man, David is quick with the typing. David got it first again.
And what's his gift card?
Well, David got it first if that is, in fact, Bill Gates.
It is Bill Gates.
That's a great picture. And we actually had a question come in a little earlier. I don't want to miss it I don't want to have it buried in quiz answers here. From Miriam, she asked about locking computers you mentioned. How would you unlock it once you get back into work?
Oh, good question. So we're all familiar with what it looks like when you restart a computer and then you got to type your password in. When you lock the computer that way, that's essentially all it is. So you see that login prompt. So that way, if, for example, somebody has remote access into your computer and of course you don't know that, if you lock it, they can't do anything. And conversely, if you lock your computer when you're away from it, which is what all of us do at the office, somebody can't physically see what's going on or physically get on the computer, that kind of thing. It's actually kind of a funny little hat trick. We mess with each other. So you don't leave your computer unlocked and unattended, or we may do things to it while you go to the bathroom. So it just kind of keeps things interesting. But if you always lock your computer, you're much, much better off. Was that the only question so far, Clay?
Yep, just that one.
Okay, so just real quick before I get into some common cybersecurity gaps, I wanted to introduce 2 probably of the youngest folks on this call. We've got Cam and Andy. Can you guys wave? These are our marketing interns from Arundel High School, and they're tagging along for the ride. So they're not business owners today, but they're probably going to be. So they're along for the ride, and good to see you guys. Thank you for joining in. So, all right, moving right along to some common cybersecurity gaps. So endpoint protection. I've mentioned this before. It's super important. You got to have good security on the actual computer. You just have to. And as I was bragging years ago, the FBI loves the way that we do it. Moving beyond security on the computer itself, what do you think the weakest link in security is? It is, without question, people. All the security in the world cannot stop an employee from giving away the keys to the kingdom. If you give the bad guys your password, you have a problem. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you get around that and mitigate the damages. But before we get there, we've got a nerd coming up. This one might stump you guys. But get ready. David, you should sit on your hands or something. I don't know. But everybody else, get ready, because we got a nerd coming in hot. Who is this? Put it in the chat.
Well, I know that one, but I'm not gonna play.
From Wonder Years or elsewhere?
Both.
Okay. He had a game show for a while. It was actually really
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that show.
Nobody's answering.
Uh
Oh, Pierce.
Pierce got it.
Pierce got it.
All right, Pierce, good for you. Ben Stein, everybody. His show was called Win Ben Stein's Money. So he's a bit of a trivia nerd, and you'd have to see if you could best him, which is a crazy concept. All right, so let's talk for a little bit about policies and paperwork, yippee skippy. So you need to have an information security and work from home policy. And the reason for that is several-fold. Sometimes your insurance company requires it, but probably more importantly, it forces you to think through things. You know, how do you want things laid out? How do you want things accessed? And, you know, it could take you like an hour. It doesn't have to take a ton of your time, but anytime you think things through and do it with intention, you're in a much, much better place as far as getting things done. And essentially having a plan. You know, it because of the insurance slant, it helps with the liability versus not having a written plan at all. And, you know, might be required. So definitely something that you want to consider doing. You've got auditing and risk assessment testing. This is where you get an outside company to test your systems and make sure that you really are safe. That's how you know for sure. That's the only way to be sure. And of course, regular testing helps ensure safety, keeps it top of mind, and this is probably required anyway. So a little bit more about the information piece. What we like to do is mix in some cybersecurity training, short little videos that you and your employees watch to be aware of common scams and phishing attempts and stuff like that. And then we do something that actually the BBB does this too. Regular simulated phishing attacks. So these are fake phishing attacks that we send to you and your employees to make sure that everybody is paying attention and not clicking on things they're not supposed to click on. And we tell our clients, if you want to, you can not tell your employees you're doing this, but we like telling people that we're doing this because then they're aware. They don't want to be called out in the staff meeting as the person that clicked on the fake DHL email or whatever. So it makes everybody care because most of the time people don't care. So that's how you get them to care. So get ready on your keyboards. David, you don't have to sit on your hands this time because Pierce is showing you what's up. We got a nerd coming in hot. Sadly, as cool as this guy is, he's not with us anymore, but he'll always be a nerd to me. Here we go. Put it in the chat. We will accept his real God-given name or his name from the TV show from which he's famous. Both count. Do you recognize this one, Susan?
I recognize the face, but I don't know who it is. So David came in with Zach.
Close, man. Right show, wrong person.
Oh, Rolanda comes in with Screech. That's right.
That's who it is. Yep. Also known as Dustin Diamond. It's hard to believe that's his real name, but that's his name. So, yep. You got it. All right. We're splitting this up a little bit. But hey, let's nerd out a little longer. And Cam and Andy, don't fall asleep, okay? We're getting through this. So it's always better to be proactive. It's definitely cheaper than reactive. So talking about education, so those are those short little videos, you know, that just kind of keep people hyper vigilant. Generally speaking, employees are not security gurus, so you need to train them. You got to test them with those simulated phishing attacks. Super important. Couple times a month. That's all you got to do. You know, it's the only way to travel. And then we kind of like to mix in. You should just have regular, quick refreshers on the training, because people forget, people get distracted, and quite frankly, some of these scams are very convincing. A lot of times, the bad guys they'll do research, so they'll look online and figure out who your web hosting company is, and they'll send you an email, from that web hosting company, and immediately there's some credibility around it because you're like, oh, HostGator, yeah, that's who hosts our website. You know what I mean? And they'll hook you that way. So it's really important to just stay on top of that kind of stuff. And that all comes down to education. So with that, you need endpoint and network protection. It's the third time I'm bringing it up because it's super duper importante. And it also helps you sleep better at night, which is always good for everyone. All right, David, hopefully you're still with us, because you're out in front, but only by one. We got a two-way tie for second. This nerd, I got mixed feelings about, but I think you guys will know who he is. Here we go. Put this in the chat. You recognize this one, Susan?
I do.
Iconic movie.
Because I'm old.
Well, I guess I'm old too then.
Oh, Pierce coming in. Napoleon Dynamite.
Who got that one?
Pierce.
All right. We got a two-way tie for first. This is going to be interesting. So if you said Napoleon Dynamite, you are good. If you said Chris Barber in high school, you're kind of a jerk, but you're not too far off. All right. So in case disaster strikes, so no matter how good your cybersecurity posture is, something bad can happen. You just got to go into it knowing that nothing is completely and totally hacker proof. So with that in mind, you got to back it up. You got to back your data up. You have to back your data up. A lot of folks are like, well, my files are in OneDrive. I use Google File Share, it's in the cloud. I'm okay. Well, guess what, folks? Those companies have problems too. They get hacked. They can be on the receiving end of a distributed denial of service attack, so you can't get to your files. It can be bad. And if your company's at all like my company, if you get locked out of key files, you're basically out of operation. So it's really, really important, that you back up your files. So there's really two types worth talking about as far as storage, and that is on-site and off-site backup. So that's a fancy way of saying you're backing up to something nearby, like in your office, and then you're backing up somewhere outside of your office, the cloud, or if we were doing your backups, we would back you up to our servers. There's pros and cons to both, which is why we highly recommend you do both. If you do an on-site, those are fantastic because the data is like in the building, so you can move it around real fast. If you've got a terabyte worth of information, you can get it back in action way faster because it's like on, say, an external hard drive in your office. Because if you do an offsite backup, then you're beholden to the speed of your internet connection, and it might take you a few days to download that terabytes worth of data. That said, an on-site backup can get compromised. So if you're on the receiving end of a ransomware attack, the first thing they do is they take out that external hard drive. Then they take out your production data, and now you're really screwed and you have to pay the ransom. So when you have an off-site backup, then you're insulated from those type of attacks. It's just a longer time to get back into the saddle. So we highly recommend doing both. What's that?
I was just going to interrupt because Marion Rose would like to know, how do you back up something that's on the cloud? She uses Carbonite.
Okay. Carbonite is a backup tool, but for cloud-based stuff, the short answer is it depends. And we can talk offline, like on specific companies, but generally speaking, if you're using, say, the OneDrive or Dropbox or the Google file stream, most of those companies by default, they don't store the information on your computer. They store it on theirs. And then like if you want to open a spreadsheet, it just quickly downloads that one spreadsheet, for example, to your computer, and then you open it up. There's an option with all of those programs to say, no, I want the file stored on my computer. So if you do that, now you have the ability to back them up. So now they're not just with Google, they're on your computer, and then we can back that up too. So that's the best way to travel. If you have I guess what I would call line of business applications. So like if you're a law firm and you're using Clio for your client management stuff, you know, that's like a website where the data is stored elsewhere. Then you got to get involved with their IT people and say, okay, how do I get a copy of my data? You know, because if they get a compromise, which is entirely possible, you could be out of commission. Years ago, actually it was like, I guess it was about a year and a half ago. We've got a lot of CPA firm clients, and there's CPA software is like incredibly expensive. It's like $25,000 a year, you know, for this tax preparation stuff. And Wolford's Kluwer is one of the bigger software companies that does that. They were on the receiving end of a cyber attack 3 weeks before the tax deadline, which is not good. So all of their clients that had their cloud-based software couldn't do taxes for 2 of the 3 weeks leading up to the tax filing deadline. Fortunately, all of our clients had the on-premise server-based version in their offices, so they were fine. But it's, you know, eventually everything came back up, but these other folks were down for 2 weeks during tax season, and it's just because of another company getting hacked. So you need to have access to your data in some capacity, and we can help with that if you need to. But like a lot of folks get comfortable with the cloud. Quite frankly, the cloud is just a fancy way of saying somebody else's computer. It's not necessarily any safer. It's just you don't have it, it's somewhere else. So that is definitely something that most folks don't think about, but it's super duper important. So you do need file level backup. So that's a fancy way of saying your individual files, your QuickBooks files, your Word, Excel, you know, all that stuff. You know, a lot of these things you can't recreate pictures. You know, you can't recreate pictures. If they're gone forever. But you also need image level backup. And that's a fancy way of saying like a snapshot of the way that your computer is today. So that's all the files, but it's also the programs that you have installed, all of your settings. If you think about all the time it takes to get your computer set up the way you want it, you don't want to have to relive that experience if your hard drive dies and all you have is a file level backup. You gotta put all those programs back on. Oh geez, where's the license key for Adobe? Like it's just a big, huge mess. But if you have image level backups, you're good. So you really want to do both, and you want to do them on site and off site. That is super duper important. So everybody, we're going to need some tie-breaking activities up in here because we have a nerd. This nerd actually got beaten up in New York City not too long ago. Here we go. Put it in the chat. I have the hardest time saying this guy's last name. There's no reason for it. This shouldn't be hard to say.
Wow, might be a stumper. Nobody's jumping in.
Oh, really? To be fair, this is probably a 20-year-old picture. It doesn't look like this today.
Yeah,
You know who it is, right?
I do.
Okay.
Well, Rolanda jumped in. Well, maybe I don't know who it is. Rolanda first said Moranis.
Rick Moranis?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're good,
Is
Mom.
that right?
Yeah. It's the
Oh,
guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Okay, I thought it was Fred Armisen.
Oh, it looks like him. Okay. That's legit. That's legit.
Hey, Rolanda, way to go.
All right. So Susan, what's the current score?
It's a 3-way tie.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have one more. So I'm going to do a Q&A, and then we'll have one final nerd. And I guess we're going to have to limit the answers to those 3 people because we're going to have a winner. The winner, by the way, gets a $50 Amazon gift card courtesy of this nerd right here. So
wow,
we're going to do a little Q&A, and then we'll do one more nerd. One of my favorite nerds, by the way. So, all right, question and answer time. Please don't be shy. I love talking nerdy. My parents will tell you, and most of the people that know me, I probably talk a little too much, but I am a super nerd. So give me some questions. Come on. Let me get nerdy real quick.
All right, we got one from David. He asks, I assume not all cloud storage companies are built the same way. Any recommendations on how to evaluate them?
Absolutely. So of course you have to consider price, but what a lot of people don't think about is the retention policy. So how long do they retain data? Some don't really have a retention policy. So if something gets deleted, it's gone forever right away. A lot of the better ones will hang on to things for 30 days just in case, just to give you a little bit of a buffer there. And then you also want to pay attention to the encryption level. It needs to be really strong encryption. Our backup stuff, just for reference, online banking is done at 128-bit encryption. So that's a fancy way of saying the banking industry says, oh yeah, it's safe to, access your checking account over 128-bit encryption. Military grade, which you might imagine is, we're dealing with, soldiers in the military, is 256. They doubled what the online banking people do. We almost double that. We use 448-bit encryption. So even like a supercomputer would take like 300 years to crack that encryption level. So, the more encrypted it is, the better. And also, multi-factor authentication is huge. So we're all familiar with, you log into your bank and then you get a text message, you got to put a code in, or you use an app to put a code in. That stuff is not hacker proof, but it makes it a lot harder to get compromised. So you really should be using a solution that supports MFA, multi-factor authentication. It's funny. All of our company cars have personalized license plates. Mine says Chief Nerd. One of them says No Geeks. I can't believe we got this one approved, but one says Nerdy AF. Like, we have fun with our license plates. talking to one of my neighbors works at Microsoft, and I was just telling him about our license plates, and he said he wants to get a license plate that says use MFA.
That's great.
Even the Microsoft guy says that, and he's very right. That's legit good advice. So those are the things that you need to consider when you're looking at cloud storage. Very, very important. Oh, also, let me add one thing. Auditing capabilities is nice. So, maybe you want to be able to see if the employee that you had to let go last week was sniffing around in your client folder or something like that. If you have audit capabilities, you can see what people were up to. Or, oh my God, I let this guy go last week and he downloaded everything we have 2 days earlier. Like, you would want to know that. Ideally in a proactive capacity, but at least you could look back and see what's transpired. So if I could add one thing to that, auditing capability is a super nice feature to have. Do we have
Great information. We got one from Rolanda. Rolanda says they've been getting tons of internal, quote unquote, emails to my 2 main email addresses. I don't click any links, but how can I prevent that?
The short answer is it kind of depends. So Monica, can I get you to come off mute and so I can ask you a few questions?
It'd be Rolanda that
asked,
Rolanda. And I'm finding Rolanda asked to unmute. You've been sent an invite if you have the capability to do that.
Yes, I'm here.
So the emails, you said they're internal, so they look like they're coming from you guys?
Exactly.
Okay. You probably need we'd have to look at it, full disclosure, but you probably need a DMARC policy set up in your DNS records. So that's a fancy way of saying a way for the email service providers to authenticate if the sender is really who the sender says they are. And then that will immediately cut it out. If that's not what the issue is, if they're just spoofing, so spoofing is a fancy way of saying, like, they say that they're, that email address, but they're not really. That's really hard to guard against. You have to really have like a good email spam filter in place. We have a product, Spam Titan, that does a great job. But that will keep those things in large part from coming in. And then probably everybody on this call has been on the receiving ends of emails that purport to be, like, for example, Clay and Susan, their boss's name is Angie Barnett. So it might be really from email address xyzqr4@gmail.com, but the name says Angie Barnett because Angie's famous. She's on the website. They might be able to quickly determine that, oh, Susan works for Angie, and now Susan's getting an email from Angie Barnett asking her to get green dot money cards and, send them over here, send them over there. The scams are getting better though. So when you have more convincing things, like one I've seen before, for example, might be Angie is sending Susan an email saying, hey, I'm out of town. I need you to text me at blah, blah, blah. And then the scam kind of moves into a texting situation. So that, if you're public facing, you can't really stop those kind of attacks from being initiated. And that's where the training comes in, so that folks know to be vigilant and to ask questions, or even the thought process of, well, I have Angie's cell phone number and that's not her cell phone number. So, what the heck is going on here? It's just really, really important that people stay self-aware, because these scams are really, really convincing sometimes. The people are getting, there's entire crime rings that this is their job. Their job is to try to trick you out of money, and they're really, really good at it, which is terrifying. I would also consider that job security, but that's a different discussion. Do we have any other questions, Clay?
We got one more. Yeah, good information on the last one. This one is from Norman. All right, a little bit of a long one. We got, how do you protect point cloud data or construction technology data being transferred to the cloud or stored locally? Are there some signs we should be looking for that would indicate the system has been compromised before it's confirmed?
Okay, if I'm understanding this right, actually, could I get you to come off mute? I want to make sure that I'm.
Yeah, let's see, Norman. Let me find you in the guest list here. All right, request sent to Norman to come off mute.
Hey, Christopher, how are you?
Hey, doing good, Norman. Thank you for the question. So it's I don't want to make too many assumptions. So are we talking about like transferring like CAD data or something to someone?
More of I would say when I say point cloud, it's more of using a laser scanner to capture point clouds, and that's transferred into, let's say, a cloud source, because these sizes are usually like terabytes. They're big files. And during that process, how do you prevent anything from like getting into the file and corrupting it, or downloading actually a virus or something like that?
Oh, gotcha. So it's a few things that you would have to do, honestly. So you got to have good endpoint protection, so that, like, for example, you don't want a bad guy that's got remote access capability and can see or grab anything and everything you've got going on. And they can do it behind the scenes too, so you don't even see that they're doing it. But that's at the endpoint level. Then you have the concern around the transfer itself. So we highly recommend using a data storage solution that gives you that auditing capability, so you can see, okay, the data transfer started at this date and time, and it went over to here. It completed at 100% at this date and time, and nothing was accessed. Then you have that peace of mind that everything got over there okay. And the way we do our backups is really how you want your data moved around. So we encrypt your backups on the computer with that 448-bit really hardcore encryption. it's transferred encrypted, and it's stored encrypted, so that if you get compromised at any stage of the journey, the bad guys have this information they'll never be able to crack into. So ideally that you're using a service that does all of those things, and then you're as insulated as you possibly can be.
Okay, so that service also, like, I mean, once we transfer that point cloud data, we have to make use of it. We have to actually convert that data into something that makes sense. So that also covers that whole process as well too, or because just think of it this way. Technician goes out, scans the data, brings the data back into the office, transfer into the hard drive. Then another team takes that data, makes it where it's understandable by the architect or an engineer. Then they in turn have to transfer that data into the architecture. So there's a lot of open sources or points where a virus or something can contaminate the file. So this software also protects that as well.
It does, yeah. We have a the problem with you need antivirus software. So I don't want to postulate that you don't. Everybody needs antivirus software. Mac folks do, PC folks do, but there's an inherent problem with antivirus software, and that is that computers are not smart. They just do what they're told to do. So, a virus is really just a computer program that does bad things. So in a lot of ways, it's no different than Microsoft Word, except that it does bad stuff as opposed to word processing. So the way antivirus software works is, security researchers figure out, oh my goodness, this program right here is ransomware. And then they push out to all of their products, okay, if you see computer program XYZ, that's really a virus, you need to stop it. The problem with doing it that way is that there's a period of time where program XYZ was bebopping all over the internet and nobody knew it was a virus. So there's always this inherent period, they call it 0 day, but there's this period of time, whether it's a few hours or a few years, where you could be compromised by something that nobody's ever heard of before. So one of the security offerings we have actually uses artificial intelligence. And every time a process runs on your computer, it asks itself, okay, this thing says it's Microsoft Word, is trying to open a spreadsheet in a place where a spreadsheet would be, okay, we're going to let it run. Or, oh, this thing says it's Microsoft Word, but it's trying to encrypt a file. That doesn't make sense, and it stops it. Mm-hmm. So that's the best way, because then you're insulated against attacks that people haven't even heard of yet. And then built into that is the ability to, if something does try to get through, you can actually roll the system back to the way it was before that transpired. So if you're careful about how you're moving the data and you have that kind of security on all your computers, then you are in a very good place, as good as you can be.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course, yeah. And we didn't really talk about cyber liability insurance, but everybody that has a business should have cybersecurity insurance, because anybody can be on the receiving end of an attack regardless. And it's very expensive if you're hit with a certain kind of ransomware attack. We had a client, they weren't our client yet, but they came to us because they didn't have the greatest security. They were on the receiving end of a ransomware attack. They had cyber liability insurance, and their policy spent about $25,000 just telling their client base that there was an incident. I wasn't fixing anything. That wasn't getting them back in action. That was just telling the legal requirements of telling people that, hey, we had an incident and we don't think your date of birth was compromised, but they might have your mailing address. So you want to have the insurance because you don't want to have to, you don't want to be in that situation. But the cybersecurity firms are at first, they didn't really know how to price this risk or evaluate it. Now they're getting smarter. Now they're saying that you need to have things like this AI security that I'm talking about, because it just goes so far to protect you from having a problem. So one more piece of advice around insurance, because they weren't pricing it right, the premiums are going up. And I'm not an insurance guru, I'm not licensed to sell insurance, but the talking heads in my industry say that if you don't have cyber liability insurance and you get it soon, you may be insulated from a lot of these premium increases that are coming down the pike. So it actually makes financial sense to get cyber insurance sooner versus later too, if you can. So just something to consider. Talk to your insurance agent. Always a good idea. And we have some folks we work with if you need some suggestions.
Awesome. Yeah, you just mentioned speaking to an insurance agent. Miriam was asking who sells this cybersecurity insurance.
Yeah, so we like a company called Riley Insurance Agency. They're based out of Crofton. If you, I'm gonna have a slide with my email address on it. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to do an introduction for you. But I like the way that they sell insurance because they represent more than one company. So you know you're getting the best company and the best price. Because insurance, a lot of people don't realize this, but insurance, different companies have different ways they do it, especially in the business world. Like that, you know, we have our errors and omissions in our cyber insurance with a company that really likes IT companies. So like the coverage is really geared towards what we need. We're better covered than a regular policy, and at a good price. So the fact that this agency represents multiple carriers kind of ensures that you're really getting the best fit. A lot of brokerages, they sell Chubb's version of cybersecurity insurance, and that's all they're going to quote you because that's all that they can sell. So, you know, these guys are good. That's why we like using them. Good timing with the insurance. So yeah, you know, again, I'm gonna have my email address up. So any questions along that line, just feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to help keep everybody safe.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. That was the last question. You want to move on to our tiebreaker then?
Yeah, all right. So we got 3 people that get to weigh in on this. Susan, who are they again?
It's David Mungai, Pierce Wren, and Rolanda Chambers. Freeway tie.
Okay, cool. All right, so you folks get ready. It's about to get nerdy. I have a friend that actually looks like this guy. All right, ready, set, go. Da, 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 da. One of my favorite nerds, and I will accept his fictitious or real name.
David Jaleel White. He had the real name.
Oh yeah, the real name. Now, David, do you know what this guy's fictitious name is?
Well, Rolanda and Pierce came in with that.
Okay, fair enough.
Urkel. Steve
You know
Urkel.
it. Stephen Q. Urkel. Yeah. So David, you won. Congratulations. I'll be sending you a $50 Amazon gift card later today. If you could make sure that your email address is in the chat, and Susan, if you could grab that for me, we will you know, I'll get that over to you today. So that's always fun. So congrats, David. That's super awesome. But guess what? Everybody wins a little something because I got a free checklist on what to do about cybersecurity. So we want you safe. Super easy to get, pretty easy to follow. Just simply email me your request and I will get it out to you. It's a PDF. And it's an easy email address to remember. It's chris@cheaperthanageek.com. And I'd be happy to make sure that you know, stay a little safer. Of course, we do all this stuff. So if you want an expert's help, we're here to help. But even if you're a DIYer, this is a good place to start. And congratulations to everybody on this call for thinking about this and realizing it's important, because so many people don't take it seriously until they're on the receiving end of a bad situation.